Hello. Well, it's not flyable. Well, saying that, it actually seems quite nice at the moment. 50-mile-an-hour gusts predicted for later today, though, so it's wet though. Everywhere is sodden and wet, but it's starting to dry out a little bit. It's just been the worst winter and autumn for flying, mucky. Anyway, so a couple of weeks before Christmas, I said I was going to go and fly something else, no matter what the weather. So here we are. But first, a bit of admin. In that last video, about 65 million years ago, I set up a giveaway for a Maverick t-shirt. So let's do that. Cut to HQ. Okay. URL in here. Get comments. 50 odd. Go. Drum roll. Acoustic sounds. Whoever you may be, get in touch however you can, and I'll get this t-shirt off to you. Right, let's get to it. I did say I was going flying, whatever the weather, technically. So as usual in the UK at the moment, it's not flyable. And then I had an idea. I've got a cousin who lives over near Cambridge, who I see rarely. I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. My dad told me that he was building a flight simulator in his shed, and I thought, well, you know, Ken's weird, that's the sort of thing he'd do. And now he runs a flight simulator company called Sim2Do. So I thought I'd pop over and fly some of that, if possible. He's got a 737, a Lynx helicopter, F-35B Lightning, another little simulator that can be a Cessna they do training on. They run fear of flight experiences in an actual aircraft cabin. And there's a race car as well. So I thought I'd pop over and have a look and show you around. Let's go and meet Ken. So this is Ken, my cousin, the weird one. How did you get started? Oh no, I don't know. I'm not very good at this sort of stuff. Your interest in flying came from your dad?
Yes, so when I was young, he built radios for police aircraft.
Okay.
And so they needed testing. So he would go out to an airfield. There were Bell 47s that they used in the police, and we'd mount these radios in an aircraft and then obviously go and test them. And every time there was a test, I tagged along and was allowed to get in the cockpit and fly with a pilot, obviously. And we'd go flying through mountains and everything, and then he would hear him come over the radio, right, shake it around a little bit, and 9 times out of 10 the pilot will go, well, there you go, you have control.
Okay.
And I would try and fly it straight, and obviously I couldn't. I flew a bit like you did today.
Thank you.
And you know, eventually
exuberant.
I was quite good at it. I got quite a few hours. I probably had, by the time I was 16, probably about 100 hours in different helicopters.
Right.
And that's my first love. So I always wanted helicopters. And then I joined the South African Air Force. I flew with Kudu and worked on Impala jets. Leaving the Air Force, I went into engineering. Always wanted to fly. Built a motion sim at home. My dad couldn't get in it, so I bought a bigger one.
So you built a flight simulator in your shed?
Yeah. And then,
what was the
well, I'm nuts.
Okay.
So there is no reason. Yeah?
There was nothing that instigated that I'm going to build a simulator.
No, it was there.
Yeah. Okay.
It's and so I built that one, made it better and better and better, and then my dad couldn't get in the thing.
Right.
He had a gammy leg.
Yeah.
So I built a 2-seater one, which was not motion, and then I went and spent some time in a motion sim, and I thought I could build one of these. And so I decided to come home, cut up the old sim, and started building a 7.3. So that's basically where the business started. Got that 7.3 all up and running. I bought the helicopter while I had nowhere to put the helicopter, but I bought it.
How much? So you bought a Westland Lynx. How much of it did you get?
I bought the front end.
Oh, there's some photos. I'll put some photos up. Yeah.
So somebody had cut off the front end. It was a military company that cut it up, but it was just a shell. I had nowhere to put it, so it stood in the garden for 2 years.
And how many simulators have we got in here now?
So there are 5 here now.
Cool.
5 different ones.
We're going to go for a walk and have a look at them. Let's do it.
Yeah, so this is a racing car simulator. Just really, it's a basic sim, probably the easiest sim I built. Phonetic steering system and tactile transducers for sound. And the one over there, we call it our Toby sim. It's an Elite Pro Panel 2, and we train cadets to fly that aircraft. So they do a 5-hour course on that. There we go, air side. Here we have a 737-800NG. This sim was owned by an airline in Europe and never actually assembled. And I bought it at an auction as a whole load of parts and then rewired it and assembled it here. And then we have the Lynx. Just the shell. I had to remake the main instrument panel. I did have it, but it wasn't wide enough, so I've widened it by 1 inch either side, and redesigned gauges and GPS systems. The overhead is wired correctly. All the gauges operate as they should do. And of course we've got a 360, not a 360, a 180 field of view by projections. And this side is F-35. This is Serena just flying the F-35 now.
Is the bit you control. When you pull back, the nose goes up and the black dot goes up. That's where it gets a little bit confusing, because sometimes your brain will say to you, but the pink lines are moving, maybe I'm moving those.
So I've got to try and aim the black dot at the pink cross all the time, and that will keep me
moving around, and it will keep you on whatever heading I've asked for and whatever altitude I've asked for. Right. So this is our flight management system. This controls everything about our aircraft. We've got our maps which we can track where we're going, what we're doing, or where we've been. Usually we use this for if someone's done a particularly difficult flight and they want to understand where it went wrong, we can see and track where the flight's gone. We can put failures into this system, which today we haven't got any. We can change the wind direction and fill it with the TCAS if we need to. There's all our passengers today, so they're the people we'll be looking after, and this is our fuel. So I'm going to adjust our centre of gravity. We want 22 ideally. So 22, if you imagine nose of the aircraft 0, 100 the tail, 22 sits under your pilots.
Okay.
So we just adjust the fuel there. So today we're positioned at London Newton 926, and our weather is what we call natural weather system for today. This
Cool.
time of year. If you'd like to come in, mind your head as you come in, and if you use that handle to stabilise yourself onto the seat. This system controls where we're going, how heavy we are, how much fuel we've got, and it basically covers everything you need to know. This is on running, radios are on, lights are on, systems here, current holding arm to check the fire.
So this 737, it basically made me glad that I fly a paramotor. I spent the whole flight staring at this little screen, trying to keep a black dot on a pink cross and not enjoying the views out the window. Whereas on a paramotor, the views out the window is all you look at pretty much. But I've got to say, it felt very real. Serena's pre-flight and her talking through the flight was really professional. I could easily believe that I was in a real plane. I mean, you can tell from the graphics on the monitors outside the window that you're not, but everything else felt real. And the atmosphere they have going with it, there's radio chatter going on in the background. The tactile transducers, which are a speaker that vibrates instead of making sound. It uses the sound to make vibrations. It all felt very real. Engine start up, you can feel it. And the fact it was a static simulator just made no difference, because my brain was telling me we were moving. If I didn't know, and I'd been in it and then got out and was asked if I felt it moving, I think I'd have probably said yes. So this sim is apparently that good that the CAA would certify it, if only they didn't need 30 grand a year in order for you to be on that list. Apparently the FAA just want to see some photos and then they'll give you the paper. But it is that good that airline pilots use it regularly for practices before their check flight, which is something they have to do I think once a year. And if they don't pass that check flight test, they can lose their job like immediately. It's the real deal. So onto the Lynx. I knew this was here, and this is the bit I was most interested in because I've been in helicopters in my life, but I've never flown one, and I wanted to get a feel for, you know, what the controls did because I didn't know. And this is where the tactile transducers really come into their own. Just the sound of the turbines, the sound of the rotor blade, just all converted into vibrations and feelings, was a real genuine feeling. And again, I was convinced that we were moving. If you don't think about it, you just believe it without even realising. So Ken asked me what my local field was called, and I said, well, it's just a field where I take off. And he said, no, your local airfield. So I said Sywell, and then as if by magic we find ourselves at Sywell. And someone in the past has been around a lot of these little airfields and done the work and modelled them in 3D. So although when you're flying the map's just like this sort of smear of landscape, when you're at the airfields, all the buildings are there, planes sat there, control tower, it's amazing. So we took off from Sywell, got our bearings, and then when I landed at my Paramotor field, which I thought was pretty cool, I wondered if I could try that in the 737. And then Ken lifted us off, and then I flew us back, and I quite enjoyed flying a helicopter. So before this, I didn't really have much of an idea of what the controls did in a helicopter and how they affected the blades and that. But it's quite intuitive, and it seems something that with a bit of practice you could really get comfortable with. That's something I might look towards in the future. Once we landed at Sywell, Ken showed off with his circle in the windsock, and then we went out to check. I had my wedding reception at Sywell, so we flew over to the restaurant on the other side of the airfield and landed there, where there was a helicopter that took off on my wedding day. So that was all pretty cool. So brilliant. That's so cool. So I flew the Lightning as well, the F-35B. A bit of hover taxiing. Took off, flew up the coast, then out to sea where there was a carrier group, and landed on the carrier. And even this sim with this screen, you know, without the sort of 180 field of view, it felt so real that as I landed I felt the need to then go and arrange a boat to get a lift back to shore, which was very strange. And I was surprised about how sparse the cockpit was in this plane, and Ken sort of insisted this was what the real plane was like, because the last fighter plane I sat in was a Lightning, which is just dials and switches and levers like everywhere. Where there isn't pilot, there's controls. So Ken said this was exact, and I didn't believe him, but I went home and googled some pictures, and yeah, that plane is flown with a touchscreen basically. The modern world. So thanks to Ken and Serena for that. I really enjoyed my couple of hours over there. And if you're interested in going, or you'd like to send someone else as a treat, then you can go to the website, which is on the screen here and in the description below, and use the code NOOB10 for 10% off. Valid for 4 weeks from the date of this video. So get your orders in. Hoping for more flyable weather soon. Lots of fly-ins appearing on the calendar. We've got Paramotor Club Boar Chasers in March, link below. Paramotor Club Summer, which is right down the bottom of the country, almost Land's End. That's a long drive, but it should be worth it. The views down there will be pretty good. Hoping for good weather this time. So these fly-ins are only open to members of the Paramotor Club. So get along to paramotorclub.org and join up if you fancy. Gets you free entrance to these 3 fly-ins a year, a spring, summer and autumn one. They fill up really quick as well. I think you have like between 180 and 300 pilots on the fly-ins, and like they are half full within hours of being announced. We've got Icarus X hopefully coming up. Preliminary dates are June 19th to the 21st according to my notes. Stay tuned for details on that. I think they're going to be able to fit more pilots in than they did last year. There's quite a bit of interest already, especially from some newbies, which is really good because something like that really sort of teaches you about yourself. I'll be there, God willing. Weekend before the Icarus, I'm hoping to be up north, Bournemouth, Blackpool area, with some friends on holiday, just for a long weekend, but I'm planning to take my motor up there as well. Some beach flying, possibly. I'd also really like to do an SIV in Turkey, or get on one of these organised paramotor tours on the continent, you know, somewhere I could drive my motor to. But I think that might have to wait till next year. Okay, quick reminder, Acoustic Sounds, get in touch. I'll get this t-shirt off to you. And going forward, hope the weather starts getting better and I can get more flying in and more videos out. Until then, I'll see you next time.